Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm Preacher Moss, comedian extraordinaire. Before we get started, let me say Ramadan Mubarak. In advance, I'm hoping that everybody has a successful fast. Now, brothers and sisters, I'm here today to talk about the Islamic City 30-day challenge to love Allah more. What does that mean, Preacher? It means that we're all going to talk about the different ways that we can love Allah more, that we can dedicate ourselves and devote ourselves to the Most High, and in this special time of the year, Ramadan, get closer to our Lord. Now, the way I'm going to love Allah more, brothers and sisters, is I'm going to focus on correctness. Self-correctness, emotional correctness, spiritual correctness. Because I believe in this way I get closer to my Lord because I'm a lot more humble and a lot more open to His mercy and His wisdom. This was a big thing for me when I became Muslim about self-correction, especially growing up in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, hearing all the noise about what I was supposed to be as a young black man, as a young black boy. And I found this calm, if you will. This calm that was passed down for me, from my relatives, my mom, my dad, all my relatives. It was that whole idea that we could self-correct ourselves. And I found this peace in the religion of Al-Islam. Now, you can't do what I'm going to do. I mean, don't copycat. Make your own video. I always said I'm going to love Allah more because I'm going to focus on self-correction. You have an opportunity to make your own video and talk about how you are going to love Allah more. That's right. So what are you standing there for? You got a limited amount of time. Ramadan is starting in like 15 minutes. I believe that you should get out and try to figure out how you're going to love Allah more. Make a video, 2 to 3 minutes. Join the challenge for Islamic City to love Allah more. I'm Preacher Moss. In advance, Ramadan Mubarak, and I'll be seeing you throughout this 30 days. Take care. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm Preacher Moss, comedian extraordinaire. Before we get started, let me say Ramadan Mubarak. Before we get started, don't forget to take the loop off. Let me jump in here. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. My name is Preacher Moss, host of the SOS, a ShOUT show. I want to ask your forgiveness and apologize in advance. This is a pre-recorded show. The reason was I was a little under the weather and it wasn't really getting better, and I just felt the need to trying to get some sleep. Shut it down a little bit. My voice is going. As many of you know, I suffer I suffer allergies, but this year has been really, really bad with climate and the rain and traveling and things like that. Not making excuses. Normally I tough it out, but as the saying goes in Islam, your body has rights. My body has rights, and I am listening. Don't want to make a one-day problem a week problem, so I ask for your du'as in advance. Brothers and sisters, before we lock into this subject matter, I alluded to it yesterday, and I highlighted a topic yesterday is why parents matter. And what we discovered is that there is a crisis in the aspect of how people are being able to do parenting. The politics of parenting, the economics of parenting, the social dynamic and the culture imperative of how children even see their parents is something that we discovered yesterday. We discussed yesterday. Today, I do want to lean into a little bit of the headlines. I spent some time watching footage of the school shooting in Nashville. And there's a lot of it. And I want to give some kudos to Nashville Police Department that got in there right away. I recognize they recognize the seriousness of the situation. They risk their own lives to save others. 100%, may Allah bless you and reward you for that. But there was something even deeper that I began to understand and feel. And it really bothered me last night. I didn't sleep well. And it was a question about, can America protect its children? Can America protect its children? The onslaught against the youth is more than these school shootings that we see. This is the violent manifestation of policies and social engineering that we've let go. In some regards, we challenge, but we let go. This is who we are. This is where we are right now. And what I wanted to talk about today was this aspect that we may be going down an even deeper slope in the context of, can't we protect our children? This was the 19th Let me say it, the 19 school shootings since the beginning of the year. So in 2023, we've had 19 school shootings. Anybody who's a parent, anybody who cares about children will look at what I just said and will be aghast. We'll be absolutely mortified because this is the country where this is not supposed to happen. I believe that other countries that are not superpowers are doing a better job in the context of protecting their children. Now, there's different ways that we do it, but what I found is there's a fundamental failing that we can't get off the mat and understand that the things that are begrudgingly tearing apart our society in the context of advocating for children, preventing violence against children, and laying out pathways for brighter horizons, it's just not there. And it hasn't been there in a minute. And so we're going to talk about that here on the Shout Out Show. I hope you guys stick in there with me. I'm going to come back in a minute. I'm going to give my Shout Out Show love to the Shout Out Show family. Anybody else that's listening, if you're listening and you tuned in, doggone your Shout Out Show family too. But we're going to be right back talking about can America protect its children. And again, this is Shout Out Show Ramadan 30 for 30 that you're taking a part of. We'll be right back.
We just need help.
Imagine if there wasn't an olive branch. Muslim Family Services at your command. The people who help people have to say, we need your donations, don't delay. We all have struggles from time to time. Believe it's dedicated is what you find. Before another person sheds a tear, support Olive Branch, you don't have to fear. Olive Branch Muslim Family Services. Action you can see, compassion you could feel. Sing it with me. Ooh. Ooh.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Let me make sure I give some shout out love. I want to make sure we get some love to Sister Ree. Sister Ree was under the weather yesterday, struggling. She did join us, but we hope that she is feeling better today. Her allergies are kicking in just like my allergies. And Sister Ree, hang in there. God bless you. Hang in there. If you need anything, please give me a call. Don't hesitate. And du'as are in the pipeline from all of us here on the show. Prayers and du'as are in the pipeline for Sister Ree. We hope that you feel better. Peace and blessings to your husband, Derek, and peace and blessings to your son, the almighty Jawan, my main man. Next up, I want to give a shout out to my main man, Altar Rashid. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, better known as the Canadian envoy to the Shout Out Show, who's been a long-time ride or die, just like Sister Reed, long-time ride or die to the show, has been an immense supporter, and we appreciate the loyalty and the sincerity and the care. We appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much. I want to give a shout out to my main man and his queen, Bilal Salahuddin, and his queen, Sister Sonia Salahuddin, from the great city of Houston, Texas. Always tuning in. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, beloved. I hope that you're doing well. Also want to give a shout out to my main man, Eric Carter, who tunes in from the great state of South Carolina. What's going on, brother? Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to you. Also, some of our outliers. Sister Rabina Chaudhry always tuning in. When she tunes in, she comes all the way from the UK. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My main man, JT, little brother. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Better known as Johnny L. Thomas, but we call him JT. If you know who he be, we call him JT. Thank you so much for tuning in on the show. Also want to give a shout out to my main man out of outside of Toronto, Adam Khan, man. I hope that you're doing well. Peace and blessings be upon to you. And a shout out to my main man, comedian extraordinaire, my main man, L.A. Hardy, who tunes in from time to time. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to you. I'm going to tell a story to put a little bit of this in context of can America protect its children. We began with a story from my youth. We were maybe, I don't know, in the suburbs of Maryland. Maybe we were like 11, 12 years old. It was a group of us would hang out, and there was this older guy who would come around and hang out with us and kind of frame himself as a mentor. His name was Rob. That's what we called him. We called him Rob. And Rob would come and hang out and kick it with us. And, he'd buy us stuff. And, we had our own money. My mom didn't allow for that. So, myself, my big brother Rick, we would hang out with Rob. And, we played basketball and sports. But Rob was older. Rob was in his 20s. I would say maybe late 20s. And he was always around us as kids at the playground. You want to go to the store and things like that. And we thought Rob was cool. It was cool to hang out with an adult person that wasn't our parents. Let me frame it like that. And we got used to Rob being around, hanging out. And then there was a situation where Rob did something to somebody in the group. Sexual assault. And while it didn't, he didn't do it to me, and didn't do it to my big brother and some of the other kids. The younger one that he did it to, he had been grooming. And we didn't understand it because we're young. We just thought those two like to hang out. And once we found out what happened, we had a meeting. I don't want to say a meeting of the minds. We had a meeting of very immature minds. And we hatched a plan that we were going to lure Rob down to the railroad tracks, and we were going to give him a business. You don't do that to one of our clique. Now, this is not the sophistication that you have now in terms of dealing with pedophiles and things like that, but we didn't know the word pedophile. We just thought he was a creep. We thought he was a creep, and he was sick, and he was weird. And we lured him to a place on the railroad track under a bridge. It's called the Carter Avenue Bridge. And we had about 6 or 7 of us on this side and 6 or 7 on this side. And we made sure he couldn't get away. And we had gotten other guys. And what we found out later on was that he had been doing this. So some of the people that were coming to serve justice on Rob, if you will, they were just people not saying that they were victims. And everybody had a bunch of rocks. Everybody had like 6, 7, 10 rocks. And we stoned, I guess, in our own version. We stoned Rob. We put it on him. We beat him up pretty bad. I'm not proud of it. This was justice that we saw at that age. And we never saw Rob again. We don't know if he moved to another community. We don't know where he came from, as a matter of fact. So we know what community he went back to, but we never saw Rob again. But I look back on that story, and what I remember was the immediacy of something had to be done. That while the person who was affected wasn't our child, he was our brother, or she was our sister. And that's all we needed to know. Granted, we could have gone to this person's parents. He didn't want to do that because it was a situation with that too. He was in foster care, so he didn't want to get moved. So we understood that, but something had to be done. And that's what we chose to do. We chose to beat the snot out of Rob, the pedophile. Now we flash forward a couple years, and I find myself coming out of college. I'm a wannabe revolutionary. I'm arguing. I'm protesting against apartheid and bad conditions for the black man. I'm doing all this stuff. And there was a voice that said that, you have to look at the black child. The black child and the black mother and the black child, that's the hope for the community, not just the hope for the black community, the hope for the entire community. Because you say, if you want to know how America is doing, look at how they treat their children and how they treat the minorities. I was both. And that drove me to be a teacher. And it was at age 22, 23, that I realized that there was an assault on American children. It came in a way of curriculum. it came in the way of producing children that would not be competitive in the marketplace once they left public education. And when I say left public education, we're talking about an investment, a mandatory investment of children having to go to school from kindergarten all the way up to the time that they're 16, which mandates that they have to have effective engagement with the education system that's around them. Problem is, if the education system around them is flawed, what is it that they're getting for skills, awareness, and understanding about themselves and the world they're going to face? Well, faced with that reality, I began to understand that the world isn't fair. That while my parents, alhamdulillah, got me a good education, I came from a family that valued education, that when you finished high school, you had two options. You had three options: college, get a job, or go into the armed services, because you're not going to stay in mama's house for free. But these were protections that my parents and my grandparents and my aunts and uncles, people in my community, that neighborhood, the children that vanquished Rob, that these were the things that we held dear. When I showed up to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the children that I taught with were not from abject poverty, but they were dealing with poverty in their everyday lives. And what I pulled from that is the fact that we didn't protect our children. That for all the resources that we had, that I had a job with a decent salary, benefits, the people that needed the most didn't have the things that I had. That I was equipped to go into a classroom and teach and do all these things. But when the subject matter of my children's welfare, my students' welfare would come up, I wouldn't know what it was. It meant that that conversation was over. And over and over and over and over again, I began to see that there was a war on children. But the problem was the war on children was being waged by America in and of itself. Now, let's back up, because this might be a little hard for some folks, but let me give it to you straight. As long as the Indian child was suffering, as long as the Latino child was suffering, as long as the black child was suffering, there was tolerance. And that tolerance housed justifications to do that. That high incarceration rates meant that they didn't know how to act, that they had absolutely no relationship to lack of opportunities in education. And then over the last couple of years, it expanded. COVID, if you will, was level the playing field for a lot of people. That now healthcare became an issue because it wasn't relegated to these poor areas. That the old, the young, and the children was suffering from umbrage from this pandemic, if you will. And America sought to jump in and do something about it. But why so late? Why did it have to be pushed to this level of extremity to jump in? And the question was, because the powers that be began to understand that they have to save these people in some regards, to exploit them, to oppress them, to give them the poor jobs, to get them to do the bad work, to fill up their prisons. You got to have bodies to do that. So Donald Trump and Sleepy Joe afforded us these stimulus packages and things like that, of which we're going to have to pay for at some point in time. But it didn't solve the problem. That you have a level of rage, that now the thing that was worried about in these inner cities and these poor areas, that the rage would somehow spill out on the street, and that gave you the justification for heavy policing. That the killings now happen in the suburbs, in the good schools, and the kids who played Little League and the parents who are in PTA that raise these perfect children now have to bear with the monster that's in the closet. The monster that's in the closet. The thing that says, wait a minute, this is what you've been avoiding. The lock that they put on no longer restrains what's behind that door. Well, we know what's behind this door. You've been telling us that. You've been trying to make us that. And here we have a killing spree. As I said, 19 19 school shootings. 19 schools. Let me frame that for you. 19 school shootings is more than the actual grading cycle at this point in terms of report cards for schools around the country. You have more shootings than grading report cards have gone out. You had 2 report cards go out at this point in time, maybe 2 to 3, but you have 19 school shootings. So let me say this. America is not in the habit of protecting its children. It's hard to protect your children when you've exploited the parents of the children. And if you are in a category of exploitive behavior, you can't stop. When we speak about the devil, the thing I understand about the devil is that he is the devil. Mischief and things, that's his way. He can't help himself. The question is, in terms of not being able to protect our children, is it an outgrowth of the fact that we are so used to exploiting the youth, exploiting poverty, exploiting unemployment, exploiting poor education, exploiting the fact that people can't get houses? That the machine that keeps people poor, or as we say, deaf, dumb, and blind, is still in practice, but now it's in the suburbs. Where it was little Leroy and Abdul, it's little Missy and Brad that are now suffering the consequences. We'll be right back. The ShOUT Show. Talking about can America, again, can America, brothers and sisters, protect its children? We'll be right back. Hey, babies. Welcome to Radio WCUC, Convenient Urgent Care, home of the smart patient. This is DJ What It Do. You know what time it is. It's the top of the hour, and the request lines are open. You know what you want to hear. I know what you want to hear. Operators are waiting.
I just got to hear don't get the COVID.
Don't get the COVID. Put your mask back on. The Delta COVID, more contagious than before. Don't get the COVID. Go on and get the vaccine. You know that it can keep you safe, and your people living up in your space. Don't get the COVID. You need to wash your hands. The Delta COVID is more deadly than before. Don't get the COVID. Go on and get your vaccine. You know that it can keep you from dying. Don't leave your family all alone and crying. Don't get the COVID.
We invite you to join our fight against COVID and against misinformation. It's time to listen to the doctors and trust the science.
When I think of people dying that don't have to die, it makes me sad. Now's the time to be sober. Together we can make this thing over. Let's fight the COVID. Convenient urgent care, home of the smart patient.
You have to really be here to see and feel and understand what a race against time means. In every direction, there are groups of people working through the search and rescue operations. In that direction, there's a live search and rescue going on. The family members are sat by a fire. They've been saved. Underneath rubble is their loved ones. They're eagerly waiting to find out. You see everywhere around us, in each direction we look, there's destruction. There is consideration that this area, Nordege, will be completely destroyed because all of the buildings require a complete knockdown and start again because they're no longer safe. This has a population of 50,000 people, and the urgent support is needed to help shelter them, provide them with vital, life-saving assistance. We're doing what we have to. We're working around the clock, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ease the suffering and to open our hearts. And we're asking you, please, brothers and sisters, give generously to help us support those who are most in need.
You know, one of the greatest pieces of religious theology I ever read was Muqasid al-Sharia.
or the protections of Sharia law. And what's interesting is it's not a groundswell, it's not a breakthrough, it's an affirmation. Whether you're Christian, Jew, Christian, Jewish, you can even be atheist, but somehow, even with atheism, you still value life. And there's several aspects of protections of Sharia: health, wealth, faith. And one of the big ones is youth. Protect the youth. Because if you don't protect the youth, then everything else falls apart. If you don't have youth, there are no followers. You don't have a constituency of young believers that propagate as you see. If you don't have youth, you don't have a welfare or a workforce moving forward that project a certain amount of attitudes and core values. Is that if you produce youth that are unproductive, then in that space you've spent 12 years investment through government or whatever. You spent 12 to 13 years to 14 years of somebody that's unproductive and has, in many regards, solidified being unproductive, meaning that you have to make a major lift to make that person productive. You have to change their behavior and their thought process as to how to be productive. Why is this important? Because in the United States, but throughout the world, people have forgotten the importance of Sharia law, but the importance of protection of the youth. The reason why protection is really important, I didn't say this yesterday, why parents are important, because parents will protect their children. And they will protect them in the most organic of ways. They will protect their children in the space that they want their children to be correct about their views, how they do things, how they practice, and how they look at ethics, how they look at morals. That parents will protect them in a way that no one else will. That a parent will absorb a youth's mistakes in the space that I can do this now with the understanding that moving forward, the child's future, the behavior is going to improve, it's going to solidify, it's going to be productive in the world marketplace, in the space of life, if you will. But when I watch the news, we understand that there's a failing. Because you can look at certain aspects of adults who are revisiting their youth to remind people in society that they weren't protected as youth, that they were exploited as youth, that somehow something in them as young children, teenagers, was broken. Harvey Weinstein and the Me Too movement was an expression that, and it's not, and it's not just the victims, it's the victimizers that also remind us that something is broken as youth. These core values or these ideologies that carry forth in business, that says a lot for people. It says a lot, brothers and sisters. And I want to be clear on this show, as clear as I can, that something has to be done about it. That while we're talking about a shooting in Nashville, somewhere, somehow, somebody, a youth who will grow into an adult, possibly, somehow sees this as a acceptable form of expression, an acceptable form of negative attention seeking. So I'm going to ask the question, what are we going to do about it? If America cannot protect our children, then damn it, we better figure out how to do it ourselves. Every once in a while, you got to meet a pedophile under the bridge at Carter Road.